All right. Nice. Dude, I'll be real. It actually feels so good. Uh, it feels so much better not posting shit to Twitter and Mastodon to advertise my stream. Uh, Especially since all it does is really clutter my feed and like it doesn't really do that much to draw people to the Twitch stream. Most of the people that discover my stream would probably just find it from Twitch, right? Like they probably wouldn't find it from Twitter or Mastodon. In fact, if there were any place that people were likely to find my stream from that isn't Twitch, it would probably be YouTube, right? Because most of the stuff that I post to YouTube is taken directly from my stream. Everybody doing? And oh shit, I'm almost at 150 subscribers. Let's fucking go. People really liked the debate review that I did. The Vosh versus conservative hype house, where I said that all conservatives are evil, and then justified my statement. Yeah. Who is this guy? Hmm. What would you label your ideology? Oh, John Romfo, welcome to chat, and thank you for the follow. I saw that you followed me. My ideology, I think the broadest label that you could put to it that would give like a decent idea is socialism. Socialism and then like anarchism. Those would be two labels I think that would decently describe me. But all my ideological leanings and political positions are mostly motivated by the fact that I like democracy. Democracy seems to be a good way of running things. Uh, and my problems with the world largely stem from the fact that it is not democratic enough. So yeah, socialism, I guess. Okay, some minor track updates. Cool. No, I didn't need to do that. There we go. I fix that. There we go. Anyways, this time's not going to be as loaded up as last time in terms of like stuff to talk about. I have a suggestion from the Discord channel, and then there's like one or two things that I saw in the news. Actually, no, just one thing. And there's some discourse related stuff. There's some personal stories. It should be a nice mix of things that I had in mind for this stream. Hopefully, not as uh, upsetting as last time. I've been democratic socialist for a while, but recently I've been questioning political democracy. Wait, so you're regressing on the democracy? Political democracy is unequivocally a good thing. The problem with it is that it doesn't. The problem with liberal democracy is that it is only democratic in one area of life. It's not, liberal democracies are not necessarily socially democratic or economically democratic. There's this might sound a little bit reductive, and I'm sure it is because it's more complicated than this. But if you can think of life in a very complex society can be divided into like three theaters. There's the civic theater or the political theater. Then there's the economic theater and there's the social theater. And you can have like different guiding philosophies in each of those. A liberal democracy has a democratic guiding philosophy in the political sphere of life, but does not have a democratic guiding philosophy in the other two, in economic and social life. A social democracy has a democratic governing philosophy in civic life and in social life, but not in economic life. A socialist system would have democratic ethos, like guiding principles in all three, in the civic life, in social life, and in economic life. Um, you know, and I think that's good, actually. Frustrating that 50% of voters want to vote for a man who tried to overturn democracy and 90 plus indictments. Yeah, and that is not an indictment of civic democracy. That is an indictment of economic authoritarianism. Because if you think about what drives voters to prefer certain policies or certain people, it is ultimately what they see in the news media. News media is where people get their information and stuff like that, and people's opinions are shaped by that, by a process of manufacturing consent, because the news media is owned by despots. The news media being part of the economic landscape is not a democratic thing. It's not controlled by the public. It is owned by fucking I don't know Rupert Murdoch or whoever else is. It owns like media conglomerates and stuff. So they are autocratically setting the narrative that best advances their own interests, and that influences people's opinions. Um, and that could be fixed if only there were more democratic control, if the power had been diffused rather than being monopolized by somebody who owns all these media companies in all these different countries all over the world. If media companies were owned collectively, because then you don't get that kind of monolithic narrative control. That is why the average voter is so fucking stupid. That, and also the lack of access to higher education, something that is also a problem with there not being enough democracy, because higher education costs money. It is possible to cut through that narrative. I'm capable of doing it. There are other people that are capable of doing it, but it's a very rare thing, because in order to do that, you need to be educated. You need to have critical thinking skills. And that's something that, for the most part, you kind of have to go to college to be able to do. You have to get a really good sense of how the world works. But in the United States, that costs tens of thousands of dollars to do. So it is mostly limited to people in the upper classes. That's part of the reason why the capitalist class is so opposed to the expansion of access to higher education, and opposed to like student debt relief and things like that. The 50% of voters that want to overturn democracy, or who want to vote for Trump. By the way, 50% is generous, but that percentage is the end result of the capital class pursuing its own interests and intentionally trying to keep people as dumb as possible so that the working class doesn't develop class consciousness, and so that the working class doesn't try to push for a worker democracy. Anyway, this has been the Communist Manifesto 2. Hope that helps. But yes, it is very frustrating to see that. Doesn't seem like there's very many people online today. I might have to find a non-custom track room. In fact, let me just do that. Worldwide. Perfect. Oh, well, looks like there's plenty of people online today in the regular tracks. Anybody I recognize? Doesn't look like it. Well, player maybe. It depends on who they are, but I think there are a couple people with just the player tag that I might recognize from Europe. I saw your review of Vosh debate. Are debates something you do personally? Yes and no. Um, I usually with debates, I usually like it's not something that usually happens in chat because it's like my chat isn't active enough to do that. But I have been known to do debates from time to time. The first debate I did, I think, was with somebody who challenged me on the virtues of economic democracy, debating about like market socialism. And then I think after that, the only debates that I've done were one with a chatter who came in to defend Israel at the start of the assault on Gaza. And then same thing a couple more times in recent weeks. So I've debated against chatters, but I've never done a proper like somebody calls in to debate me. Mostly what I do like doing, because I'm trying to get a little bit more of a platform as well. I like doing debate reviews with debates that I think have a certain value, right? There are a couple debates that were like just kind of a recent thing that I thought, oh, somebody else might not have done this debate review. I should do it to strengthen my rhetoric and to show other people that like these are what points are good and what isn't. With the Vosh debate in particular, I outlined in the video that debate is useful for understanding the sort of policy playbook and rhetorical playbook of conservatives broadly. You know, I'm not so much interested in debate just by itself, right? But as a method of like strengthening your own positions and like strengthening your rhetoric and stuff like that, it's pretty good. Yeah. Oop. Very silly. Ah. I also I also try to only review debates that I haven't seen beforehand, because it's kind of like a, you know, it's a bit of a faux pas for you to review a debate that you've like pre-watched or something like that. The best item in the game. Let's go. God damn it, I got bombed. I'm gonna use this here. Oh, nice. Am I gonna get first because of this? I am. Sick. Gotta get back to work. You seem cool, so a usual listener. Oh, well, that's good. Good luck at work. I'm gonna probably wait for another regular chatter of mine to show up because there was a thing they wanted me to talk about. I would love for them to be able to give their thoughts. These we do. Love Dry Dry Ruins. My favorite track. Let's see. I guess I can go through the one news item that I saw today that like independent of my Discord that I wanted to mention. You know, the majority of the political discourse has been about Israel and Gaza. And I saw this today that's just kind of more icing on the cake of like how obvious the genocidal intent is from Israel, I think. In particular, I guess I'm hoping that Mr. Globalize My Agenda 69, also known as Flat Earth Dennis, docs, sorry. Hopefully they're here to hear this, but in the French journal that I read this morning, I saw some news that there was a UNRWA building in East Jerusalem. UNRWA, of course, being the organization that provides relief funds and humanitarian aid for Palestine at the UN. The building was burned down by arsonists. Israeli extremists went and set the building on fire and burned it down. All the while actually screaming, burn the UN. This was not just an attack on the UNRWA. I mean, obviously their building in particular was burned, but this was part of a larger, this was an expression of a larger sentiment against the UN itself, because, the UN has obviously been pretty critical of Israel's actions. The ICJ saying, in fact, that they could very plausibly be interpreted as genocide, pending further court decisions and such. Israeli extremists were pretty upsetty spaghetti about that one. And it is, although this is one example of this happening, the trend of targeting UN buildings, targeting humanitarian operations in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip and elsewhere, is part of a genocidal pattern of behavior. There's like two big things that countries that engage in genocide typically do to this effect. It's targeting humanitarian aid, and also trying to bar journalists from entering the area, trying to prevent there from being media coverage on the issue, both of which Israel has been doing. This is just the latest example, burning down a UNRWA office. But blocking humanitarian aid from entering as well is part of this project, as well as massacring people who are lined up to try to get the limited aid that does make it across the border. Assassinating journalists specifically, targeting journalists' houses. Israel has been using these precision guided munitions to kill journalists reporting on the issue that are in the Gaza Strip, and they've been refusing entry to journalists. Basically, don't let the Palestinian people have access to any humanitarian aid, and don't let anybody who isn't one of these Palestinian people have a camera in the region that can show what we're doing. Because ultimately Israel's doing a genocide, and the more coverage that gets, the more noise is made about it, the worse it looks for them. This is in large part why the UN has been so up in arms at Israel. Israeli extremists burning down a UNRWA building is part of this extremist pattern of behavior. Hello, and Buzz, welcome to chat. MKW cheating is random? You mean random is cheating, or what? Mirror mode? Oh, no. Oh, and it's this track, too. Castle of Time. Man, I used to be good at this track, but recently it's been, like, my Achilles heel. Oh. People are still cheating in 2024. Was there a cheater in that room, or in this room, or what? If so, that's no good. That ain't no good. I'm gonna throw this back. I don't have much interest in taking out first, so much as I have an interest in maintaining second at the moment. Gained some time on him there. I think I know where I want to use this mushroom. Oh, no. I used it too late. I couldn't make up my mind there. Whether I wanted to just go in shroomless or whether I wanted to use the mushroom to skip through the shortcut really easily. And I've just kind of brain farted, I guess. Oh, this is a great spot to use this golden. Ah, I see. Oh, nice. I actually got the mushroom there. Oh, eat that. Oh, he had a bullet bill. That's kind of crazy. No, he stole my body. What were you doing? Why didn't you take the other shortcut there? Oh, well. There's an item set coming up. Hopefully I can get triple mushrooms or something. Oh, well, speak of the devil. Fourth, maybe? Third, I guess. Okay. Man, top two were way up there. I need to relearn how to do that shortcut at the beginning where you skip the turn. I think. Yeah, I think that's what I need to do. Okay. Now who's ready for something a little bit more fun? There's a little bit more fun topic of discussion. I talked about this a little bit last time, but I don't think I was quite in the right headspace to do so. So I'm going to try it again. The topic I'm thinking of is Superman. Superman in particular, because there's a lot of, every time Superman comes up, whenever people talk about comic books, there's the discourse that tends to go back and forth about whether people think, oh, Superman is a boring character because he's just a god and invulnerable and whatever. Even though, like, you have to create kryptonite specifically so that he can be hurt by stuff. And then people saying like, well, he's hopeful. He's a big blue Boy Scout. Oh, I'm saying random worldwide's not CGP. Randoms needs mods. Okay, I got you. Yeah. Yeah, Superman. I like the character of Superman. You know, the last time I talked about superheroes in like a video segment or whatever, I talked about Spider-Man, I think, and why I love Spider-Man so much. And in fact, I juxtaposed him to Superman in that video. And I still believe that like I like those character traits in juxtaposition to the character traits of Superman and sort of like the character that he is. But that's not to say I don't like the character of Superman. I do, very much so. But I have some thoughts about the characterization of Superman as boring and like, you know, just a random, like, god character in comic books and stuff. Particularly regarding Zack Snyder's interpretation. I think there's some do's and don'ts with Zack Snyder's version, right? He does some things right, believe it or not. Zack Snyder does some things very right with Superman. And I'm going to refer mostly to Man of Steel with those. A lot of people cite Man of Steel as the primary example of, like, the boring god Superman trope, which I don't think is really applicable. I don't think that really fits. I like the way that Superman is depicted in Man of Steel. Because he's not, like... He is a fish out of water, right? That's one thing that is true about Superman in Man of Steel. He's a very kind of fish out of water character. He doesn't quite fit in when he's growing up. And part of that is because he's an alien and he's like discovering these powers that he has and whatever. But there's another part of it that people kind of overlook, and this is taken directly from comic book influence, from comic book inspiration. The part of the reason that Superman is a fish out of water kind of character is just because he's lonely. He's a, you know, at his core, you know, when you're watching adult Superman in the Zack Snyder Man of Steel movie, he's at his core, he's a lonely, kind of socially awkward, college-aged guy. And I think that resonates with that can resonate with a lot of people. It's very relatable as a trope or a set of tropes. And in fact, I relate with that to a great degree because that was kind of how I was throughout a decent chunk of my college existence. You know, he ultimately, you know, Superman in Man of Steel is much more human than the critics of that movie would give him credit for. And, you know, I see a lot of myself and other people my age in him. So I like that interpretation of Superman. I don't think it's a very boring version of the character, because it's like, what is he thinking about, right? He doesn't have all that many friends, so who does he care about? He cares about his mom. He cares about his dad. He cares about his house. He cares about this nice woman that he met, Lois, on the ship. He cares about the people that he's met in the military, who he's interacted with throughout the course of the film, even if he doesn't know them super well. You know? And he doesn't really care about he doesn't care as much about the Kryptonians. He doesn't really see them as his people, right? Like, they are alien to him as much as, like, humans would be to the Kryptonians. Or you know... General Zod and his crew are as much strangers to Superman as they would be to any other person on Earth. You know? Superman is still just, he's a human. He just has the abilities of a Kryptonian, basically. You know? And I think it helps that he doesn't have, like, the greased back, slicked back hair for most of the movie. What he has is an Anatoly. He's just, like, curly hair, kind of like a Greek myth character, which there are definitely parallels there. You know, Superman with the Greek heroes and whatnot. But now I'm gonna find some common ground with the critics of Zack Snyder's interpretations of Superman, and that is in the later versions of the character, in Batman vs Superman particularly, where he does now have the slick back hair and is very emotionally cold and distant. This is another thing, actually, that Zack Snyder's Superman did right in Man of Steel, was that Superman is kind of like a moody guy, you know? He's not this, like, emotionally cold and distant figure. He has trouble, you know, putting some stuff into words and whatever, but, like, you can tell what he's feeling. It's not like this detached, godlike sort of interpretation. He's in fact, he's very attached, if that makes sense. But then, you know, in BVS, that's kind of gone. In most of the time that you spend with Superman in Batman vs Superman is as Superman, where he's very straight laced and like not all that personable, dare I say. You know, it seems like all of the oh, Superman's just not that interesting. He's like boring, kind of detached. He doesn't really feel human. A lot of those critiques do apply in Batman vs Superman. You know, I can definitely see where that's all coming from there. Um, you know, that's what I feel about that. Everybody died, including me. This room is pretty hectic. I missed the box. Turn, give me a box. Yes. Oh no! Can't believe I hit that wall twice in a row. Yeah, you and me both, Mario. We both hit the same banana. No! That's so bad. That's so bad. Okay, I still got third. So to recap, I do like Man of Steel Superman. I don't like BVS Superman. I do like Kingdom Come Superman because it's a much older Superman that does kind of the same thing. The conflict in a lot of Superman comics that do the character well is not like a physical conflict per se. Is Superman gonna beat up the bad guy? Yeah, of course he is. He's fucking Superman, right? I'm actually not a huge fan of the comics where a lot of the conflict is very physical. Superman is at his best when the conflict is emotional, ethical, and like ultimately non-physical, right? Where his ideals are being challenged, where he needs to be resilient in a different kind of way and show that he's not just, you know, physically strong, but also very emotionally strong and capable of being like the best version of himself and being somebody that a lot of people can look up to in the sense of like uh, personability, compassion, and things like that. You know, there's a number of Superman comics that involve him talking to somebody who is depressed or suicidal and just staying up there for like, you know, staying with them for hours just to like to make them feel like they're not alone. And I love that. I love that version of Superman. Hope you have a good weekend. Thank you. You too, Elohim Buzz. Um, you know, but those tend to be one-off comic events. Kingdom Come Superman is sort of an old, more weathered Superman in terms of like he's a little bit more cynical. He's a little bit less hopeful, and I think that the overall story of the comic, I don't want to spoil too much because I would highly recommend it actually as a comic that people would want to read. Um, the arc of that comic is kind of like building Superman back up because it's like, you know, as much as Superman thought that he was wrong, the whole comic is kind of about like, no, Superman, you're right to be this hopeful, in some ways kind of corny and very earnest character that Superman is. You know, it's kind of trying to create a world where that attitude is gone, even in Superman, only to build it back up and tell the world, yes, we do want this Superman. We want the sincere, loving, earnest, kind of corny Superman. That's what we love about him. It's not the fact that he's big and strong. It's the other stuff, you know? Um, but all of that, a lot of that is present in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, and a lot of that isn't present in Batman versus Superman. Uh, and I wish people would be able to see that more, because I think Man of Steel gets criticism that it doesn't deserve. Tried to go around Boo and it didn't work. But anyways. And of course, it also helps. I'm going to tie my politics into it a little bit. It also helps that Superman is not a very wealthy character. He's very relatable from a class sense of things. Obviously, like his one of the bad guys in Superman is literally like a billionaire. Even though Batman is a billionaire good guy, you have Lex Luthor, the billionaire bad guy, and whatever. And Superman, I think the class is one part of how they make Superman feel like he is just a human, because he's living in human society and all that, and he has to deal with the problems that a not rich human being would have to deal with when he's not doing the Superman thing. He's just doing his job as a reporter and whatever. I really like it. I really like him, in fact. And I think more people should be Superman enjoyers, Superman appreciators, Superman enthusiasts, even. Because what a lot of people miss about Superman when they say like, oh, you can't really be Superman. Yes, you can. I mean, you can't pick up a car. You can't go and punch Darkseid into next week. But you can make somebody's life better. You can be the kind of earnest, corny, Boy Scoutish character that Superman is without having the super strength and whatever. And I think that's the beauty of the character. And I love him for that. He's very huggable. Very huggable character, I will say. So anyways. Everybody go show Superman some love. He's a good character. And honestly, okay, this is the one other thing. I think Injustice does such a disservice to Superman. I think I've come around on Injustice. I used to like it because it was like the concept of Superman being bad was still kind of novel. I don't think so anymore. I think the idea of like Superman just completely snapping after the death of Lois Lane and becoming like a authoritarian dictator completely misunderstands the character. In fact, Kingdom Come Superman is a great example of that. As a result of something Superman did, millions of people died, and that story was still about, even despite all of that, despite all of the harm that has come as a result of Superman having like fights with these other like very morally questionable superheroes and whatever. He is still a good person. He's still like somebody you could aspire to be, right? And Injustice takes that in the entire opposite direction, in the wrong direction, I think, where it says that like, it's basically the core message of Injustice is that Superman is so detached from all anything resembling humanity that all it would take is the death of his wife and son to turn him basically into Hitler too, right? Which obviously that's not to say that like such a traumatic event wouldn't have any negative consequences on him. It unquestionably would. But I think that like those consequences are severely misunderstood and mishandled by the Injustice comic series. You know? And you only really need to look at Kingdom Come Superman or any of the stories of Superman, consoling a suicidal teenager in order to see that. Also, we got Beef Boss in the room. Let's go. What's up, Beef Boss? I don't know if that's actually the man himself, but got him. Not quite. I do like that double snipe, though. I'm going to clip that. Wow, that's minus a lot of VR for fourth place. All right, fuck it. Oh, looks like the room's gonna split into chunks. Okay. Yeah, all right. You know what? I'm gonna write that down. I had another segment that I've been slacking on creating the thumbnail for that I still need to upload. We're gonna do that today, but I also want to make a segment out of that Superman rant. Oh, what's he doing over there? Okay, nice and easy race. Cool. Nice. 1v3 in chat yet? No, I'm waiting patiently for them. I'm gonna leave this room also. There's so few people. Try to find another one. Let's talk a little bit about somebody who hasn't been relevant for a while in online politics. And I do mean online politics specifically. You know, there can be kind of a divide between real world politics and online politics at times. There's some overlap for sure, but there's also a rift. Lauren Southern. It had been a while since I heard the name Lauren Southern. I think the last I'd heard of her before this is that she came back to YouTube and was doing a sort of enlightened centrism bit, which to me didn't mean much because Lauren Southern was a far right commentator before that. And people who do the enlightened centrism bit are just far right with the veneer of like both sides are bad. However, I will only ever criticize the left for being bad. You know, the veneer of enlightened centrism is thin indeed. Insert meme about the Dutch Center Party here. Uh, but apparently there was another reason for that. That actually made me feel kind of bad for Lauren Southern. She had been going through an abusive relationship, and this is relevant to her politics. I'll lay out some of the bare bones details. She had gotten married. She moved to Australia, I believe. And her husband was just like turbo abusive, like actual 1940s and 50s abusive. You know, people idealize the 1950s and whatever, but what they're idealizing is just a billboard advertisement depiction of the 1950s. It's not real, because the reality of the 1950s was uh, people yelling at their spouses, you know, men yelling at their wives, hitting their wives, being incredibly controlling over them, women not having certain rights, not being able to open like a bank account, not being able to drive, being completely at the whims of the man, because like the guy was the only one earning an income. Women couldn't really get jobs in the 50s. Basically, all of that, basically a 1950s relationship brought into the 21st century because Lauren Southern had bought into the myth of the like trad wife. You know, the trad wife being like, stay at home, sundress, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen, whatever kind of tropes about traditional womanhood and being a wife and whatever. Lauren Southern bought into that, and she thought that it would be great, and it would be fun, it would be like, I don't know, basically kinky roleplay. People are into that, if people are into that, people are into that. But the key thing is that it needs to be a mutually consensual thing. And for a lot of guys who idolize that relationship, it's not a kink. It's just them wanting to control women, and not even necessarily in a sexual way. People who do BDSM play and whatever, you'll have a safe word. People can be into that and then be like, okay, well, we're turning off the pretend for this moment. For a lot of far right guys, that's not pretend. They just want to basically have a uh, a servant, a slave at home, and that's kind of how Lauren Southern was treated. Um, I like, and I can't really blame her because it's very easy to be taken in by that rhetoric. I mean, obviously, like, insert some canned line here about like you're far right, this is literally what you signed up for and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think the fact that she realized like, oh shit, this is actually horrible, how did I ever believe this, uh leads to me having more sympathy for her, at least assuming she doesn't kind of default to those far right talking points in the future, because now I think it's almost impossible for her to not make that connection, you know uh, but the main thing is not even necessarily specific to Lauren Southern. I just kind of wanted to mention that as an example of this is the kind of dynamic between men and women and in relationships that conservatives and the far right wants. This is what they ideologically push for when people talk about traditional relationships. This is what they mean, you know? This incredibly, inherently abusive dynamic. That's why a lot of conservatives back in the day objected to women joining the workforce. It was because that was one axis, the economic axis, along which they could no longer control them, and things like that. You know, although to sort of beat the liberal feminism allegations. Obviously, I would not agree with liberal feminists that we have now solved that problem. We haven't. Like, I'm not a believer in all that girl boss shit. Just because a woman has a job and whatever doesn't mean we've fixed patriarchy or whatever. Or even that, like, every man is at fault for this. It's sort of a narrative that everybody's indoctrinated into. But some people believe more full-throatedly than others, and it produces horrible consequences. Um, but obviously, the ideological adherents of this particular brand of fascism tend to be guys, because a lot of guys are really fucking insecure and emotionally stunted as well. Insert meme about the far right being really gay because they hate women, something like that. But yeah, I thought I'd comment on it because it's like it's the online version of the current thing, I guess. So you get that one. Hit my own banana. Very true. All right. Finish the race. Fuck it, I'll say it with it. What? Yeah. A little bit bad for Lauren Southern. That kind of sucks. It is also important to note, this is more tangential. As weird as this sounds, you should probably avoid conservatives when you're dating. And I am serious about that. Because it's a matter of like the odds of a relationship being abusive, right? Conservative ideological positions, conservative beliefs lead to abuse. Like the inherent leanings of those political beliefs lean towards abuse. You know, the rape apologia, the like I said, the narrative about traditional uh, husbandry and relationships and whatever. Uh, a lot of abusive relationships can come as a product of the conservatism of one of the people involved in the relationship, whereas more normal or like left-leaning beliefs, uh, it is still possible for people with those beliefs to be abusive or to be in abusive relationships, but the abuse in that relationship wouldn't come as a product of those beliefs. You know, it would be as a result of something else. Uh, and again, a lot of that is because fascism is fundamentally it's like founded on sexual insecurity and stuff. I really like this track. A lot of other people really do too. It's a really good new design. Um, you know, as opposed to like a retro custom track. It's got some flaws. You know, there's some shortcuts. There's like the one shortcut shortcut that I did where you go off the ramp at a certain angle and you go across that really big gap there. That's one thing that can kind of hurt the track just a little bit, you know, because that shortcut that I just did there, it's very hard to do. It's uh, you know, it's not the easiest thing for new players. But apart from that, this track is basically just as it appears for new players and experienced players alike, you know, and I respect that a lot because it's a decently long track. Um, so it feels like a custom track, you know, but it's not Kaizo, at least not for the most part. I'm gonna throw this back here. Okay, cool. Another good race for me. I keep getting first, but it's also I think I'm driving decently well today. With the exception of what was it? I forget what the name of that track is, but where I hit the pillar a couple times. I wasn't driving super well that race, but other races I have been. That is not what I meant to do. I need to click on that. Get that out of here. Okay. Now, who's ready for a personal story? And when I say personal story, I don't mean like something super intimate. I mean it is a little bit like it's part of my personal life. Um, I had an experience with the job recently. I got a job, and I think there's a lot of people that can relate to this. Obviously not everybody, but a good amount of people. I had been interviewed. So first things first, I should have known right away that something wasn't quite right because I got a call for this job. I didn't apply for it. I got like a phone call. They said like, "Hey, we saw your resume on ZipRecruiter, and we think you might be a good candidate for this job opening that we have at our company, right?" And they were like, "Are you available a couple days from now?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So, you know, phone call went through. I went and did this job interview. Uh, and the beginning of the next week, they said, "Hey, you got the job. You'll start tomorrow." It was on Monday I got this call, so Tuesday. This is where I was on Tuesday. Um, I was like, all right, cool. And it was a full-time job. And another red flag, they didn't mention pay either. They alluded to it, I think. There were some things that they alluded to, which made me think, like, okay, the pay would be this. But I don't think they didn't explicitly mention a salary number or salary range or whatever. Um, which is on its own, it's a pretty significant red flag. Now, I should mention that, like, there's no negotiation process. When people, like, when they mention a salary, nobody negotiates their salary. That's not a thing that happens anymore. But you should get a number at the very least. Like, if it's a real job, they will give you a number. They didn't even give me a number, but I was kind of taken in by the fact that, like, oh shit, I'm gonna have a job now. I might be able to get a salary, move out, have my own place, and things like that. So I got some stuff ready for the next day. I went in, and what I had been led to believe was happening, what they had told me, what they had implied, was that the next day, the first day of the job, and in fact the first week would be training. That I would go to the job, and they would train me for the week, and then the next week would be when I really got started, right? And so I was like, okay, which sounded legitimate. Most legitimate jobs, I think, will do that, where they have a week or a month or however long of training, depending on how complex the job is, and then you can, like, properly start getting ready for doing the work, you know? But I got there, I got to the office, right? And I had lunch. The hours for this job were a little bit odd. It was a 8 hour a day thing, but the hours were not like 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. It was 12:30, so like just after noon, or it was like noon to 8, like 8 o'clock at night. So it'd be 20 hours, not like 20 hours per day. It was from 12 hours to 20, so it would be that 8 hour span. Uh, which I thought was weird, but I was like, hey, look, there are jobs that work odd hours that are perfectly normal. I'll go check it out. Right? I get there, I have lunch, and then they're like, all right, we'll get started with the training. We go up there, and this is where I started to notice that things were wrong, right? So the first thing is that one of the things they told me to have when I got to work was a like a notebook, so that I could write down some stuff, taking notes and whatever, which I assumed, like, yeah, okay, seems legit as part of a training process. We never ended up using that. I never ended up using that. Another thing they told me was to dress business casual. So I did. Put on my nice high-waisted pants that I got tailored. Put on some like Vans shoes that are kind of dressy a little bit. Put on an undershirt, tucked it in. Put on a collared shirt over that. Went to work. Um, and I was the most dressed up person there in just a collared shirt and pants. Uh, Everybody else was wearing like sweatshirt or like t-shirt and jeans and stuff like that. Which, on the one hand, I think it could be kind of a red flag and kind of not. I think the business casual is just a like doesn't really mean what it used to. You know, I think there's a lot of people who hear business casual and they think like basically you're wearing a suit but not the tie. That's certainly my parents' interpretation of business casual, and that's just not what business casual is. Not anymore, anyways. You know, but also some of the people there were so dressed down that I was like, okay, this is not even a business casual working environment. You know, it's just regular casual. So that was another thing that was off. And then uh, another thing that was off was that there was only like there's only a few people there. There was 5 of us total. Myself, one other new recruit, and then the 3 people that were there before us, right? And I was like, okay, it's a little bit small. On its own, also not that much of a red flag, but like, it's a small thing that started to add up a little bit. And then when we started the training, they gave me a script. They gave me like um, a piece of paper with some stuff written on it, some notes and such. And this is where another red flag came in, because this is where I learned this was not the job that they had led me to believe it was. What I thought when they were interviewing me was that this was a third-party marketing group that would do work with known NGOs. You know, they work with like Doctors Without Borders, Red Cross, and St. Jude's Children's Hospital. In fact, those are the 3 that they mentioned. They named those 3 specifically that they allegedly did work with. Right? But when I got there, or in the interview, what I was thinking was, okay, now my dad works at a nonprofit. He's done this kind of stuff before, where he's trying to get other groups to work with him. And what my conception of that was, as my dad had described it, is you have like a convention. You know, you go to a convention, because the interviewer mentioned there would be a lot of travel, which did add up to me. I was like, okay, that makes sense. You like go to a convention in a city, like convention center somewhere, and you have a booth, and you're sitting at that booth, looking at people coming by, and you know, maybe somebody comes up and you explain to them, hey, you know, how's it going? Are you interested in working with us? Is your organization specifically interested in working with our organization? You know, you hand out some pamphlets and things like that, because that's how NGOs. That's part of how NGOs get in contact with each other is at these conventions. That's a little bit of how they coordinate. And I looked at the script and I was like, oh, this is awfully scripted. This is like very involved. Usually the approach that I was thinking of is a bit more passive. Um, you know, and we're reading through it, and this is the point at which I realize, okay, I don't think this job is for me. I'm looking at the page and I'm like, okay, these are high pressure sales tactics. You know, I'm looking at some of the bullet points that they have is like, hey, things to keep in mind, things to do when you're talking to somebody who has come by or who you're like meeting with. They were kind of ambiguous about that part as well, which you'll learn why in a minute. And a lot of it was not just high pressure sales, but also like a very toxic positivity esque work environment. where it's like always see the positives, always blah 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 blah. And I was like, okay, I know that workplaces, even for good organizations, can be kind of toxic, but this is a bit much. This is kind of like over the top. Um, and again, they're just teaching me how to be a high pressure salesman. Uh, funnily enough, my thought was only confirmed because we rehearsed the script for like a couple of hours, and then we went out to this guy's car. Guy who was the recruiter, the guy that hired me, and we started driving out on the highway. I was like, oh shit, we're going out right now. This was another red flag. That training ended so quick. I thought it was going to be the whole week, but here we were going out to the field after just like 2 hours of rehearsing a script. So things were starting to get really, really fishy. Not just like, okay, I don't think I would fit super well in this job, but also like what's really going on here. And we get to an outlying neighborhood. We go all the way, we go like past DC into Maryland, I think. Like we go across the river into a suburb of these, I guess you might call them like open air apartment blocks. You know how there's apartments where you have to go inside to get to the units there, but then there's also some apartments where it's like a flat. The units are outside. There's no like inside hallway or whatever. It was one of those kinds of apartment buildings. And so I was like, what are we doing here? And they were like, yeah, we're going to go around knocking on doors and give our pitch. And I was like, oh god, this is just a sales job. And so I was like, okay. I was going around shadowing this guy, basically, because, he had been doing this for longer than me. I was there for 1 day. And I started really having questions about the ethicality, about the ethics of what we were doing, because we were, like, catching people in all sorts of uncomfortable situations going door to door. Now, I've had experience canvassing, and what you're supposed to do to give a good impression to people is take your foot off the gas. I know this from phone banking. If you're talking to people and they're uncomfortable, they're not interested, you give them that out. And you expect them to take it with the expectation that, look, at least they won't remember me negatively. Obviously there's some stuff that you want to do that are common to both sales and canvassing, but at the end of the day, canvassing, you're trying to convince people of something, like ideological. You're trying to talk to them, not talk at them and pressure them. Sales, that is what you're trying to do. This guy who recruited me, we were going around asking for like $1 a day donations to this NGO that I had never heard of, which is probably just a sales scam. So we go around there for like 2 hours, and then it's 5 o'clock in the evening. We go back and we drive for a while. We drive for like 30 minutes. We get out to Chantilly, Virginia. That's like near Dulles Airport at the Dulles Expo Center. And we stop in the like the parking lot where there's a bunch of fast food restaurants, and we're like, all right, let's grab some dinner. He was like, just be back by 6. It's 5:30 when we get there. And I go into McDonald's, and this is where I've had it. This is where like I've had it up to here. And I'm done. Actually, there's a part I skipped. I'll get to that in a minute. So I was thinking about it at dinner. I'll sort of work this into the story that I'm recounting here. I go in and I order a burger from McDonald's, and it's been like 4 years since I've had McDonald's, and rightly so, because I ate that burger and it hit my stomach like a nuke. I've never eaten something that made me feel as horrible in terms of like greasiness and whatever as a burger from McDonald's on Tuesday of this week, right? Like it was bad. So anyway, I'm sitting there having this burger. I'm eating my dinner. And I'm thinking, like, I'm starting to really think about, like, okay, I'm not going to stay with this job, but also, like, Shit, I don't think, like, I think we're the bad guys here, to be honest. Because, I thought back to us going through the apartments earlier. Um, and what had been going on was, like, we got one, we first of all, I saw a no soliciting sign on the door, and I tried to explain that, like, there could be some potential legal liability if you knock on that person's door. You don't want to knock on the door that says no soliciting. And my, boss, like the guy that recruited me, who was also my boss, kind of like brushed me off and was like, well, no, we're gonna, do it anyway. And I was like, fuck it, all right, fine. I didn't say fuck it, all right, fine, but I was like, you know what, okay. So they knocked on, so he was knocking on one of the doors, and then we got to, another one that said no soliciting, and the person there was actually on their way out. They were going to a, what was it? Like a Taekwondo event, you know? Like literally on her way out the door, and this guy stops her and was like, hey, do you have a moment for blah, 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 blah. We're working with blah, 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 blah. And at one point, she started to look kind of uncomfortable and impatient and whatever, and like, I could tell, like, she's got to go, she might be late for this thing. And so I was like, look, if you got to go, you got to go. And she's like, yeah, I really got to go. Sorry, guys. And so she left. Like, literally, she had stuff in her hands, and she was on her way out the door. And the guy, like, my boss said, like, dude, what are you doing? It was like, dude, she was on her way to this place. She was, like, literally out the door. Like, we were going to make her late. Is that really the impression you want to leave them with? And he was like, no, dude, you don't understand. You got to get them while you got them, and blah, blah, blah. Basically started reciting the whole, like, high-pressure sales thing to me. And I was like, okay, so he doesn't actually care about the impression he's leaving on these people, or they don't. They just care about getting the $1 a day for however long, and basically conning these people out of their money. And so at that point, I was like, all right, fine, whatever. I was like, okay, sure. And I kind of shut up for the rest of the day. I decided at this point, like, look, I think I know what this is now. This is just a high-pressure sales job that I've been misled into. At a certain point, I was feeling bad about it, but at this point, I didn't feel bad about what I was doing anymore, because I was like, look, I'm as much a victim in this as any of the people whose doors we're knocking on. After today, I'm done. I'm not going to go back. And that decision was partly tactical, the decision to shut up, because I knew that if I voiced concerns about it, I would either be A, brushed off, or B, like, high-pressure sales talked. Like, they would try to use the high-pressure sales tactics to convince me to stay with them and do the high-pressure sales thing. Basically like a pyramid scheme. Because it's like, you would only get paid on commission. There's no wage. You don't get paid a salary. So we go through the rest of these apartments, or we go through as many of them as we can, and what it starts to, like, really mount the, like, shit, dude, we really are the bad guys, because there were some people that agreed to donate money to the thing that they were raising money for, but disproportionately, the people who agreed, who were like, yeah, I'll donate some money, were, like, immigrants. They were people who weren't from the United States originally. Like, God, some of these people were working 12-hour shifts. Like, some of these guys just got home from their construction jobs. People inviting us into their very modest apartment, like living rooms and whatever. People who had young kids. Some people who didn't even speak English hardly, and definitely weren't earning that much money. But it was like, it was playing on their heartstrings to donate money into what was basically a black hole. I felt so bad. And so at the end, I wasn't just sure that I didn't want to be there. I was, like, I had, like, a new moral conviction against this place that I, like, didn't want to ever go back, So we're on the car ride home. They asked for my address, and I was like, yeah, sure, here's my address. And so they drove me home. And On the way uh, back, I was like, man, I gotta help this other new recruit get out of here as well, because the other person that was there was a older woman who had a son, and she was like, yeah, I took this job to try to help my son, because we're having a rough time and things like that. I won't go into too many details for privacy's sake, but we actually exchanged numbers. Um, and So what I ended up doing was I went back home and I was like, okay, this was a scam, and tomorrow what I'm going to do is I'm gonna text this woman. I'm gonna text her to try to tell her like, hey, you need to leave. You need to get out of this because this is a high pressure sales scam. So I did that. Uh, what was it? Yesterday was Thursday. So Wednesday morning, I got up and we had exchanged numbers because it turns out we had quite a bit in common in terms of our family lives, which was actually quite nice. She was a lovely woman. And I was like, hey, if you can, you gotta get out of that job if possible. They're not gonna pay you. Basically, something to that effect. Like I said, hey, how are you doing? Just checking in and all that. But like, ultimately, I said like, look, it's your decision to make, but I would say please if you can get out of this job because it's a commission sales job. They're not going to pay you unless you sucker people into whatever it is that they're selling, and they're probably not going to pay you all that much either. Um and we talked back and forth a little bit, and she was like, "Yeah, okay. I think you're right." And to my knowledge, I haven't texted her since then. I want to get back in touch with her, maybe to do something with the families. I think she would get along really well with my mom. Um, I haven't texted her back yet, but to my knowledge, I think she's left because another red flag that I realized after the fact, or like kind of 2/3 of the way through, they didn't give me any paperwork to sign. A legitimate job. If you take a legit job, they're gonna ask for like I don't know your social security details, some paperwork, like proof of eligibility of work in the United States, and like documentation. They're gonna ask about insurance details, basically all the sort of onboarding stuff that a regular job would need to know. But they didn't ask for that, so I was like, look, they didn't ask for any paperwork. They didn't give us anything to sign. You can just leave this job and never turn around and never go back, and there's nothing that they can do. And so you should do that. And in fact, I used my parents' experience to back that up because I was talking with my parents about it, and they were like, "Yeah, actually, early on in our careers, we also had experience, like kind of being suckered into high pressure sales job. This is a thing that some people experience sometimes." And my dad said that, like, yeah, it was so bad that on the first day, I was like, all right, guys, like to other people on the job, all right, I'm gonna go grab some lunch, and he just left and never saw them again. And I was like, that's funny as hell, you know. Kind of use that to inform my advice. So it was a very tiring experience, um, but I think it taught me some valuable things. And at the end of the day, I'm happy with how I handled it because I went in the fool, and I came out much less of a fool, and actually helped somebody else leave as well. Because actually, during the car ride, one of the other things during the car ride that happened was one of the higher ups, one of the like, I think it was like my boss's boss or something, called like over the like over Bluetooth or something. This guy had his phone plugged into his car and such. And started giving a pep talk. It was like, you guys are doing great, you're blah, blah, blah. And it legit sounded like some shit that a cult leader would say. You know how cults always use this super, super flowery language, you're doing good in the world, blah, 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 blah. Like basically love bombing. You know, if you're familiar with abuser tactics like love bombing, that's what this guy was doing, like talking to us over the radio. And I was like, oh, this is bad. This is really bad. It was one thing after another. I was texting my dad on the way home from that job that day, and I was like, I'm not going back. I literally said there are as many flags at this place as there are hours in the day. Um, you know? So that kind of, that shook me up, not necessarily in an emotional sense, because I think I was like, look, I got suckered into something, and I'm out of it now. It cost me 8 hours of my time. Ultimately, what I mean by it shook me up was just, it made me tired as all hell. Because we were outside knocking on apartment doors for a cumulative 6 hours, just about. You know, on my feet continually for 6 hours. I can't do that. Even if it was a legitimate job, you know, that wasn't for me. But what added to it was the fact that it wasn't a legitimate job. It was some bullshit, you know? Anyways, there was something valuable that I learned from that, though. In fact, there were two valuable things that I learned from that. Number one was where my job priorities are, right? I don't want a full-time job. Not if I don't need one. I want to start part-time. I want to be close to home. I ultimately, whatever I do, I want to still have enough time for this, for streaming. Because as tired as this makes me, as tired as my voice feels right now, I love this. I love streaming. And it took being in a shit job for one day to realize it. You know, how much I really like this. That's first thing. So I think any job that I go for would have to have enough time in the day and enough time in the week for me to come home, still have a significant amount of time to just sit down in front of the Wii U, in front of the computer, and live stream. And then number two, second thing, is that I think I am actually kind of a family-oriented person. You know? I went to work and it actually felt like being in high school again. It felt like I wasn't free. It felt like I was stuck. I was kind of like being led around by the nose, doing shit that I didn't want to do. And I missed being at home. I missed my family. And I legit was like, I was thinking for a significant portion of the day, I was like, man, I want to go home. You know, even if I do move out, I think I want to be close to home. Close enough that I could, you know, ride my bike over or something like that. Very near miss there. And you know what? Ultimately, I think it was worth it. I think it was worth doing that just to learn those two things. Because now I have so much more clear, like so much clearer intentions for what I want to do, for like what I want to do in the future and stuff like that. Oh no, okay, I messed up again. You know, and ultimately, I think I would do it again, not because it wasn't a mistake, but because it was a mistake. If that makes sense. It was a mistake that helped me learn, and I think as a result of that, if it meant that I learned the same lesson, I would commit that mistake again. I would go back knowing what I know now. I would do it again, because it would have, like, or I would have let myself make that mistake because of the things I learned from it. You know? That's not to say that you should do that. In fact, I would try to help anybody who's in a position like that not make that mistake, because it is a mistake. But I think you get it. It was a learning experience in a number of ways, and I'm glad that I learned what I did. Alright. Very nice. Very good race. What else did I have? Not much else. Just that story. Maybe I'll make that into a segment as well. Who knows? We'll see. But now it's just a waiting game for Evil Cat Dutch. 1v3 rather, as I like to call them. So that I can talk about Eurovision. Eurovision. Or maybe I'll just talk about it now. I'm sure somebody in chat is from Europe. Here, in fact, let's do this because there's some people watching. If you're in chat right now, post a PogChamp or something if you're European. Because then this, the story that my friend on Discord recommended to me has extra relevance for you. Alright, it's right on my tail. Ooh, good trail. What's up, Beef Boss? Thumbs up? Yeah! Alright. Consider that a green light for me. I need to do that. So, Eurovision. A Dutch chatter of mine, friend of mine, suggested I talk about Eurovision because apparently there's been some Israel-related controversy at the Eurovision contest this year. Now, I'm not a very music-oriented person. I'm not a very concert-oriented person, so Eurovision, you'll have to pardon me if I'm kind of scant on the details. Eurovision's a little bit outside of my like field of view, as it were. But there were some politically relevant things that happened there that I think it's worthwhile to talk about. Often do you stream? I try to do like once every other day as like a general rule of thumb. You know, so like one day on, one day off. The Eurovision was happening, and you know, it has as a song competition, because it's like a artistic contest of all the countries in Europe, or all the countries that are geopolitically aligned with Europe in certain ways. You know, there's some implications there. Hello, Globalize My Agenda. Welcome to chat. I was just about to talk about the controversy with Israel in the Eurovision contest. Israel apparently made it to the finals. I can't speak to the validity of that decision. Have you listened to any of the songs? No, and I don't think I'm going to, again, because I'm not a very music-oriented person. My commentary here doesn't revolve around the quality of the songs that were submitted for the Eurovision contest or that were performed at the Eurovision contest. Rather, it's around the events that are not necessarily directly a product of the music itself. So, we have an article from Al Jazeera. A lot of pro-Palestinians boycotted this year. Yes, and there were a lot of pro-Palestinian protests at Eurovision because Israel made the finals. Israel qualifies for Eurovision final amid Gaza war protests. This is from Al Jazeera. Israel has qualified for this weekend's Eurovision Song Contest grand finale, defying thousands of demonstrators marching in host country Sweden over the Gaza war. Just what happens when you don't vote people you don't like win. Well, this isn't like a meaningful political competition or anything like that. This is voting in the Eurovision contest is way less important than voting in an actual election. I'll say that much. This young singer, Eden Golan, performed a song in front of a bunch of people. Very nice, very cool. And she's very happy about making it to the finals, as well she should be. It's not easy to perform in front of that many people. But there was some controversy because Israel is currently conducting a genocide in the Gaza Strip. They shouldn't be surprised Israel won. No, they shouldn't be. And I think the protests aren't as a result of surprise. The protests are as a result of, well, political protestation, right? Are you someone who doesn't believe in voting? No. I do believe in the value of voting. I just think it's the bare minimum that you can do, and that people should, in fact, be doing a lot more than just voting. I don't think it should stop there. I can talk about that in a little bit after I've talked about the Eurovision. The reason people were protesting is because ultimately what decides Eurovision, if they kick out my country, if they kick her out, my country might win. Yeah, all the more reason. Anyways. What decides the winner of Eurovision oftentimes is not necessarily just the quality of the song performance itself, but rather the sort of the current geopolitical situation or pop politics situation. Whichever country people have the most sympathy for at a given time weighs on who wins the Eurovision contest. This is part of the reason why Ukraine won, and I think it was deservedly so that Ukraine won. Even if they didn't have the best song, I don't really care, because at that time, Ukraine warranted a lot of sympathy and a lot of eyes on that situation from the West. Now, in this case, I think the opposite is true, where Israel does not deserve sympathy. The state of Israel does not deserve any sympathy from the international community. But regardless, it is a good thing for all eyes to be on Israel because of the things that they are doing in the Gaza Strip. And that ultimately, I believe, is why... don't forget that there are a good number of pro-Israel people in Europe. Yeah, for sure. I know that much. I think that is ultimately why Twitch in the middle of the field is a struggle. May Allah be on your side, I guess, or something. Yeah, that's rough. Ultimately, the reason that Israel made it to the finals is because while people are overwhelmingly pro-Palestine, even in Europe being a bit more socially conservative than the United States, being a little bit less pro-Palestine on average, I think, the ruling class of both Europe and the United States is very, at the best of times, shiftless, or I don't know if you could say that's at the best of times, but they tend to be more pro-Israel. Politicians, business people in Israel certainly in Israel, in Europe and the US tend to be more pro-Israel than not, and those are the people whose thumbs on the scales kind of matter here, where there's like a celebrity making an announcement or a politician saying something that matters a lot. So a lot of the organizers of these events are kind of thinking of what a certain celebrity or wealthy business person or politician might have to say on the matter when the judges are making the decision of who will advance to the next round. And that's part of why Israel has gotten to the finals, is because of the pro-Israel sentiment in the levers of power. Not to say that's 100% why, but it's a significant portion as to why. And that's where you get this massive dissonance between Israel in sort of European pop culture being put on this platform and being like, wow, look how good they are at performing songs, which is, innocuous enough on its face. And meanwhile, what everybody knows Israel for right now is mass atrocities in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, right? So it's kind of like there's a weird dissonance between the moral condemnation that Israel is getting from a large majority of the population versus the praise that they're getting from, sort of the owning class, if that makes sense, you know? And I feel like the Eurovision contest is sort of a last hurrah of that. Certainly early on in the invasion and bombing and genocide in the Gaza Strip, American commentators and the ruling class were way more sympathetic to Israel because October 7th was kind of like their version of our September 11th attacks, like big terrorist attack and all that. But that sympathy ran out pretty quickly, Like, as much as what America did after 9/11 was really fucked up, we didn't commit a genocide over it, you know? We did war crimes, we did some unspeakable things in the Middle East, but the body count from the U.S.'s actions over a given period of time is much lower than Israel's. That's where some of this dissonance is probably coming from. Will anything come of these protests? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say because this is just one protest, but clearly this is just more expression of the same sentiment that that people are having a really hard time getting people in power to listen to, because a lot of world leaders and businessmen and politicians and stuff are very reluctant to pull away support from Israel because Israel is a wedge for Western interests in the Middle East and things like that. I doubt anything will change. Yeah, I mean, as a result of this protest specifically, this one protest, maybe not. But we actually have seen things have already started to change as a result of protests more broadly. The very loud and uncivil, I will say, expression of of public discontent has actually led to the Biden administration and certain countries in Europe being a little bit less friendly to Israel than they might have been otherwise. The Biden admin, the State Department leaked some memos recently that said, yeah, Israel is not a credible state. They're basically acting like a rogue state. Don't take anything they say at face value. This was information circulating officially in the U.S. State Department. And it's also sort of forced Biden to change his rhetoric to be more both sidesy rather than just full-throatedly pro-Israel, which again is like, it's not enough, but you can sort of feel the change happening very gradually. Yeah. It takes looking at the bigger picture, and sometimes it's hard to do. For everybody, but for me as well. When there's a opportunity during this race or after, I'll look at more of the Al Jazeera article about the Eurovision contest, because I believe there were a couple details that I maybe wanted to mention. I forget what exactly they are. I think one of them had to do with Netanyahu, like, commenting on the event or something. I don't know. This is our year, I feel it. Lithuania W. Yes, Israel has no chance. It would be, I'll tell you this, it would be quite something if after all of the mounting atrocities and the, like, basically ongoing genocide in the Gaza Strip, that like, it's our year every year, we never win. I like the positive outlook, I appreciate it. It would be quite something. It'd be, like, really remarkable, I think, if after everything Israel has done, the judges still decide that Israel wins, like, and Israel has won the contest, they had the best song, or something like that, Because, like I said, I have no doubt, like, everybody's putting on a good performance and stuff like that, This is an international musical competition. But, like, again, sort of, some of it's got to be determined by the popular political sentiment and things like that. So it'd be pretty tone deaf for Israel to win, if nothing else. And I think it would actually incite even more public outcry and outrage than what's already been going on. Israel made its debut in Eurovision in 1973, has won the contest 4 times. Ah, yes, this is one of the things I wanted to mention about Eurovision. I just was reminded of it just now. The criteria of countries that are sort of accepted into Eurovision is pretty racially charged. The obviously Israel being an apartheid state makes it even more charged. But the reason I say that is because like a lot of the Arab countries are not in Eurovision, despite being in the same region as Israel. Azerbaijan is in it because they're allies with European countries. You know, they're geopolitically friendly. But a lot of it has to do with, you know, that sort of alignment, who's aligned with Western Europe and all that. And a lot of it also has to do with whiteness. Who's considered white versus who is considered, you know, you're putting on my best Zizek voice. Swardi, Balkan, other, it's, and so on. Yeah, Australia is in it because Australia is a Western country and is majority white. Azerbaijan, I don't think would really, I don't know, maybe they're white passing, but mostly they align with Europe, and that's why they're in it. My favorite European state, Australia. True. Now we just need to add America to the Eurovision contest, and the meme will be complete. Azerbaijan are Turks. They're yes and no. I think they're Azeri, but it's like they're kind of Turkish. They might be Turkish. I don't know the ethnic history and like the cultural history of Azerbaijan or whatever. But whatever you do, probably don't tell an Azeri person that they're Turkish. They might shoot you or something. And then they'll like call you army. They're Turkic. Yeah, there we go. They're Turkic. And then it's like, okay, there's Turkic cultures, and then it's like Turkish just means like you're from Turkey, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Pretty sure they love Turkey. They do. That's the big country that they're allied with. You know? They provide Europe with a lot of natural gas, I think. You know, they like have a pipeline that goes from there through Turkey into like the Balkans or something. It's something like that. But yeah, what I wanted to mention about the Eurovision is that fundamentally, it's like the one of the big reasons that the two big reasons, in fact, that Israel is part of Eurovision is that they are, number one, aligned with Europe, and number two, considered white by Europe. That's the reason that they're in Eurovision, and somewhere like Jordan or Iraq isn't, even though those countries are very close together. You know? It's also why Syria isn't. Well, I mean, Syria, you could probably say, isn't in Eurovision because it's a fucking failed state and they basically don't have a government anymore. That's probably why. But, you know, even if they didn't have even if it wasn't a failed state, I'm feeling it wouldn't be. Better example would be Turkey. Oh, is Turkey not in Eurovision? If so, then yeah, there we go. That pretty much makes my argument. Because Turkey is, like, barely aligned with the West, like, if at all. And yeah, obviously a lot of European countries wouldn't, like, consider them to be white. I believe there was one other thing I wanted to mention too, at least. Yeah, this year Israel's participation and the choice of song have seen the contest swept up in the wave of pro-Palestinian protests. Turkey's pretty Western aligned. No, well, what I mean is that, like, yes, Turkey's a NATO member and they're like on decently good terms with the EU, but Turkey's also been like trying to assert their own interests over Europe at times. You know, they've been like kind of friendly with Putin. And they've actually been pretty hostile to other American allies in the Middle East and stuff like that. Israel included. I mean, I'll look the other way for that one, but like, you know, they haven't been very good towards the Kurds, who are also American allies and stuff. They want to join the EU. Yes, I believe that is true. But I think my point was just that like Turkey is a lot less aligned with the West than any other given country that's part of like NATO would be. You know, they're kind of like they're a little bit of a they do a little bit of trolling, is what I mean to say, if that makes sense. They don't let him in because of racism. Yeah, that's pretty much why. I can't believe that I didn't get that guy. I thought that fake item box was perfect. Oh, I remember what it was that I wanted to go to in the article. I think Netanyahu had some comments on the Eurovision contest, which I assume is pretty standard for a world leader to have contests on to have comments on stuff like that. Um, I want to talk a little bit about that. Let's go to it. One song's adaptation of an early version named October Rain, I see, which she modified after contest organizers deemed it too political because of its apparent allusions to Hamas' unprecedented attack on Israel on October 7th. Damn, that's crazy. I'm just learning about this right now. Never heard of this October 7th before. It sounds bad, is what it sounds like. Yeah, here we go. As she prepared for her performance, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wished Golan good luck and said she had, quote, already won, unquote, by enduring the protest that he called, quote, a horrible wave of anti-Semitism, unquote. Doing some trolling from the sidelines, basically. And that's kind of that's a little bit that's one of the things that contributes to me saying like I'd be kind of surprised if Israel won because of how tone deaf it would be. Think about like Netanyahu basically talking unparalleled amounts of shit about the UN and the Hague and the ICJ and all that, and then saying, "Yeah, we will win the Eurovision." And like if he wins the Eurovision, it'll basically be like, "Wow, great job, Israel! You're so great." And the only thing again that necessarily means is like, oh, they did a good song. But like it has further implications that would be really, really fucking tone deaf. Um, I think that's all I had to say about the Eurovision, though. Not sure if I had anything else to say about it, really. Um, you know, we'll see. There's more to that article, so it's possible there could be something else that I'm not aware of. Oh, one thing to be sure of though. Don't like be careful not to misinterpret the pro-Palestine protests against Israel at the Eurovision contest as like anti-Semitic or protests against the singer themselves. Obviously, that's the narrative that Netanyahu really likes to push because fascists love to play victim as they're oppressing or committing genocide against a minority group. Um, what they're there to protest is just Israel and their actions in the Gaza Strip, even if it seems not necessarily directly related to Eurovision itself. Eurovision's a big event. It's very popular in Europe. A lot of people watch it. A lot of people pay attention to it, which means that it is a public uh, thing. Like it's a very publicly visible thing, and that is always where protests will happen. You know, if your event is very publicly visible, very highly attended or watched, then there will be political activists that will, on occasion, that they'll use it for an opportunity to protest for a certain cause, especially if it relates to one of the states present at the event. You know, like I don't know the leanings against fucking. I don't know what the leanings of Eden Golan are. She should be a perfectly fine human being. She's how old? She's like 20 or something, right? Yeah, she's 20 years old. She's young. Um. Oh, hey, Greta Thunberg was part of these pro-Palestine protests. Nice. Swedish city of Malmo. That's a decently sized city, at least for Sweden, I think. Yeah, here we go. Calls to bar Israel from the competition have grown amid Israel's war in Gaza, which has killed more than 34,900 people, mostly women and children, according to Palestinian authorities. Uh, and then they detail October 7th for the 1 millionth time. Ah, yeah, here we go. So there is precedent for this demand. Eurovision has resisted calls to eject Israel, but asked the country to modify the lyrics of its original song, October Rain. Or song is legit good. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. But again, this isn't like criticism of her specifically. You know, critics have pointed out that Russia was expelled from Eurovision in 2022 because of its invasion in Ukraine, which I believe was justified. You know, that's one way in which you can ostracize a country for doing things that are like against certain international norms, rules, and expectations. Basically, deny them a platform to be where they can be culturally accepted, right? So it would stand to reason that Israel, having actually racked up a higher civilian body count in a much shorter time period, should also be expelled. Oh, Belarus was excluded the previous year for cracking down on protesters. That seems actually like pretty mild in comparison, you know? Oh, I know where I want to use this mushroom. Right here. Oh no! Dang. Oh, I didn't get an item. Is there anything else that happened in the... No, I think that's it. That seems like the whole story there. Yeah. Oh, man. That was actually incredibly well timed for me to like talk about all the things I had written down for today. I'll probably do one more race and then that'll be that. Well, it looks like nobody's really online today. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll close it off with a regular old worldwide. Let's see what's going on there. In fact, I'll start looking for somebody to raid right now so that I can be ready once the stream is done. Playing melee, he's playing Dark Souls. Playing melee. Alright. Oh, hey, we got some people. Big fucking. That's a really funny looking to me. I like it. Like the fucking Jim Carrey thing. When he did the Grinch face. Kind of reminds me of that. Please wait a moment. You know, surprisingly, I haven't seen that much today in my newsfeed. Okay, never mind. I have seen some stuff. I have seen some shit. I can't talk about it in the remaining time. God damn. US is fucked. I hate that the US will go to insane lengths to defend Israel. I've talked about this before, but like, you know, I've mentioned that Israel is the wedge for Western interests in the Middle East against Iran, which would kind of naturally assume the role of the big powerful country there. But all Israel has done has like destabilize the region. Like everybody in the US, like in government, talks a big game about like we want to bring stability into the Middle East. We want to win in the Middle East or whatever. But like they keep supporting Israel. Israel like striking neighboring countries and like making land grabs and antagonizing their neighbors militarily and shit like that, which is bad. Like Israel hasn't really done anything to further Western objectives in the Middle East except for like start shit, and that's not like that's not good. Somehow nobody got that box. Okay. Somebody's gonna hit that. Oh, wow. I'm kind of surprised that blue shell wasn't enough to knock me down to second place. You know? Ow. Very hectic. Alright, give me this item, please. Okay. I think I know what I want to do with this. And one mushroom. Okay. Well, I'm in fourth. And now I'm in second? I've somehow avoided... That was an incredible, like... I don't think I've ever driven that well. Future me, I might want to clip that. Seriously. Like, honest to God. The fact that I avoided that fake item box and then took the shortcut basically as tight as was possible to take it. Losing to pickpocket right now. He's gonna throw something back at me. Yep. Knew it. Oh, but he's getting blue shelled. Oh no! Stuck in the off-road. Ah. No, barely. I feel like I could have won at the end, but I made some mistakes on that last straightaway. If I just wheelie... Oh, never mind! I got first! Sick. That's awesome. Well, what a good last race. Thank you for turning out for the stream. I will be back, not tomorrow, but maybe Sunday? Maybe. Actually, no, probably not, because Sunday is Mother's Day. We're going out to lunch. My family's going out to lunch. So, John Romfo, if you're out there still, I might or might not be streaming on Sunday. It depends. But I'll be back soon. Soon, for sure. But for now, /raid, mango. Support your local J-Bone in the morning. Enjoy him playing Super Smash Bros. Melee. Joey's cool. All right. See you guys.